The hyperdrive coupling exploded without warning. Teddy Griggs, senior mechanic of Meridian Outpost, knew sabotage when he saw it. But nothing could prepare him for what came next, an impossible shadow blotting out the stars. The dragon's voice echoed in his mind. "Human mechanic, you will come with me." Her demand wasn't a request. It was a summons to save a dying race. And Teddy, with his wrench and stubborn pragmatism, was their last hope. Teddy's fingers traced the scorch marks radiating from the hyperdrive's core housing. This wasn't standard wear. The fracture lines converged at precise 17-degree intervals, the telltale signature of shaped charges. Across the bay, emergency lights bathed the control panels in pulsing crimson as the station's AI recited damage protocols in its toneless voice. Maintenance logs showed the coupling past diagnostics 3 hours prior. The blast pattern told a different story. Someone had accessed the regulator circuits through an unlogged service panel. Teddy pulled a warped component from the wreckage. The molecular binder should have withstood 10 times this stress load. Station schematics fluttered across his wrist display as structural alerts blinked to life. The explosion had triggered cascade failures in adjacent sectors. Life support, grav plating, the whole northern grid dropping offline. Calculating the odds of simultaneous system collapses made Teddy's stomach tighten. Out here in the fringe systems, insurance assessors wouldn't arrive for weeks. Not that it mattered, now. His diagnostics tablet buzzed with an incoming priority alert. The vibration traveled up his forearm as the screen displayed maintenance records from the past 6 months. 37 hyperdrive incidents cluster around this sector. The station's central computer flagged the pattern moments before its secondary processors failed. Teddy crouched beside the shattered housing, running a magnetic scanner along the inner rim. The device chimed as it detected crystalline residue, synthetic diamond dust, engineered to grind through alloy seals when subjected to sudden pressure shifts. Someone hadn't just sabotaged the hyperdrive. They'd weaponized maintenance cycles. Emergency. Lighting flickered as power relays struggled under the strain. Across the corridor, a coolant pipe ruptured, spraying vapor across the deck plates. Teddy didn't bother checking the breach. He knew every system failure by heart now. Environmental controls down in sectors 4 through 7. Artificial gravity, fluctuating across all decks. The station wasn't dying randomly. It was being dismantled piece by piece. He pulled up the station's original blueprints on his cracked display. Whoever did this knew Meridian's architecture better than its engineers. Every blast point corresponded with structural load junctions, not enough to destroy the outpost outright, just sufficient to make it scream for help across every channel. Realization settled heavy in his chest. This wasn't about crippling the station. It was bait. Metal groaned somewhere in the station's lower levels as primary supports warped under uneven stress loads. Teddy's fingers tightened around his wrench. 29 years fixing broken systems taught him the sound of imminent collapse. But the vibration traveling up through the deck plates wasn't mechanical failure. It was rhythmic, purposeful, external. Sensors flared to life on dead displays, overloading with proximity alerts. The viewports darkened as something vast eclipsed the distant stars. Teddy's tablet slipped from numb fingers, its screen shattering against the deck. The impact barely registered. His entire world narrowed to the shadow moving against the black. Alarms wailed as the station's last functional systems detected the impossible mass approaching. The vibrations intensified, not the erratic shudder of failing infrastructure, but the deep, resonant pulse of something alive. Teddy's breath fogged in the suddenly frigid air. Frost crackled across control panels as external temperatures plummeted. The station's remaining lights flickered once, twice, then died entirely. In the absolute dark, something tapped against the outer hull, not an impact. A knock. The station's external scanners sparked with overload warnings as the shape resolved against the starfield. Teddy's retinal display attempted classification, first labeling it as asteroid debris, then as a sensor ghost, finally defaulting to generic collision alerts. The thing moved with purpose, its wings eclipsing entire constellations with each measured beat. Meridian's surviving crew staggered against bulkheads, hands pressed to bleeding ears. The Dragon's subsonic pulse rattled ventilation ducts and shattered remaining viewport panes. Station Chief Ling vomited violently before collapsing, her neural scans showing seizure-level cortical disruptions. Only Teddy remained standing, his genetically modified nervous system uniquely insulated against the psychic onslaught. A wingtip grazed the station's outer hull, scoring meter-deep furrows in the reinforced alloy. The contact sent vibrational patterns through Teddy's boots, not random impacts but structured harmonics resonating at exact intervals. His augmented hearing translated the sequence automatically. Coordinates, a timestamp, an unmistakable summons. The creature's scales shimmered with interference patterns that made optical tracking impossible. Every surveillance feed pixelated when focused directly on its form. Secondary systems reported contradictory readings, simultaneous, radiation spikes and energy voids across all spectra. Teddy's comm badge crackled with the last transmission from engineering. Mass estimate puts it at... Static swallowed the number, but the tech's panicked cadence said enough. His trembling fingers adjusted the station's remaining deflectors into a makeshift amplifier. What do you want? Silence. Then pressure built, behind Teddy's eyes like a slow ice migraine. Words formed without sound, each syllable vibrating his molars. Human mechanic. You will come with me. The accent curled strangely around the verbs, grafting unfamiliar grammatical structures directly into his neural pathways. Historical databases scrolled across dying screens. No matches for spaceborne draconic lifeforms. No records of telepathic communication bypassing standard translation protocols. Yet here it was, violating every known law of xenobiology and physics alike. Across the corridor, 3 crew members, convulsed as their brainwaves synchronized against their will, their irises dilated identically, showing matching fractals of gold. Med scanners registered identical neurotransmitter floods, oxytocin and adrenaline in perfect balance. The Dragon was rewriting their biochemistry with sheer proximity. Teddy's implants fired warnings as his neural activity diverged from the pattern. Where others suffered synaptic overload, his brain adapted in real time, constructing internal dampeners. The phenomenon defied all documented human responses to first contact scenarios. Metal shrieked as talons delicately peeled back the docking bay doors like foil. Air rushed out in frozen tendrils, forming temporary bridges across the void. The Dragon's head filled the breach close enough now for details, each scale composed of interlocking geodesic plates, its pupils contracting vertically against station lights. Your kind once called us Siltharian. The voice resonated, bypassing his auditory nerves entirely. We require your particular adaptations. A mental image flashed, blurred genetic sequences overlaying Teddy's own biometric data. Secondary explosions rocked the station as damaged systems finally failed. The Dragon's nostrils flared, intake, vents analyzing the chemical traces in the escaping atmosphere. Its tail lashed once, effortlessly stabilizing the entire structure against further decompression. Teddy's toolkit rattled against his thigh where magnetic clamps fought the building. Static charge. His wrench vibrated at the same frequency as the Dragon's pulse. Not a coincidence. The realization hit like current. They'd engineered this meeting down to the molecular level. The crew lay unconscious now, their vitals stable though readings showed unprecedented neural reconfigurations. Only Teddy remained upright, his body reacting to the presence like a key finding its lock. You will assist our hatchlings, the Dragon insisted. Not a request. A biological imperative encoded into the words themselves. Teddy tasted copper as his implants registered the command activating dormant DNA sequences. Emergency lights strobed across the buckled deck plates. The structural integrity alerts reached terminal cascades. None of it mattered now. The station had served its purpose. It brought them together. Cold spread up Teddy's legs as the Dragon exhaled, freezing the fractured bulkhead into a temporary airlock. The message couldn't be clearer. Step forward or watch the station die. His boots left perfect prints in the sudden frost as he moved toward the breach. The Dragon's tongue flicked out, tasting his electromagnetic field with disturbing precision. Approval hummed through the psychic link like a satisfied engine purr. Meridian's failing gravity yielded to the dragon's innate field as Teddy crossed the threshold. His last glimpse of the station showed its battered frame stabilizing under some unseen influence, care taken not to damage what might still prove useful. The void should have killed him instantly. Instead, filaments of bioluminescent mucus wove an atmospheric cocoon around his body. Breathing became unnecessary as symbiotic organelles colonized his alveoli. Evolutionary impossibilities stacked upon one another as the dragon's biology remade him in mid-transit. He detached a spare diagnostic scanner from his belt and offered it to Violet Scale. "Careful, it bites." The dragon's startled psychic laughter echoed through the cavern as the bioship's walls pulsed like living tissue as Teddy stepped through the membrane hatch. His boots stuck slightly with each step, peeling away from the floor with wet sounds. The control surfaces weren't panels or interfaces, but thickened nerve bundles glowing faintly under a thin layer of transparent cartilage. Nearby, what he'd mistaken for structural supports contracted rhythmically, muscles, not metal. Siltharion extended a claw toward what passed for navigation controls. The ship reacted before she made contact, vein-like conduits bulging with bioluminescent fluid. Teddy's standard diagnostic scanner beeped uselessly in his hand, its electromagnetic field too weak to penetrate the organic interference. He tried a physical connection instead, jamming probes into a pulsing nerve cluster. The entire chamber recoiled like a stepped-on limb, nearly throwing him off balance. "Your tools lack symbiosis," Siltharion observed. The dragon folded herself around a central growth that Teddy belatedly recognized as the pilot's cradle. Her claws sank into the fleshy material, neural tendrils rising to wrap around her forelimbs. The floor beneath them shivered as the ship altered course without any apparent propulsion systems engaging. Teddy crouched beside what appeared to be an energy conduit, a thick vein-like structure oscillating between deep crimson and electric blue. His scanner showed constant mass fluctuations that made no sense under conventional physics. The conduit wasn't transferring power. It was somehow generating and annihilating particles in carefully balanced reactions. Attempting a standard energy reading, Teddy clipped a magnetic coupler around the throbbing structure. The ship gave a full-body shudder. Warning pheromones flooded the chamber in visible greenish clouds, making his eyes water. Controls along the walls spasmed, forcing random system activations. Environmental dampeners flared on and off. Gravity plates fluctuated wildly. Siltharion had to physically restrain a thrashing neural cable that nearly struck Teddy across the face. He yanked the coupler free. The ship's distress signals cut off abruptly. A self-repair mechanism activated, the damaged section secreting foamy, quick-hardening resin that smelled oddly of citrus. Teddy wiped sticky fluid from his hands, watching the readouts on his now partially melted scanner. Whatever energy transmission the dragons used, it wasn't electromagnetic, nuclear, or even plasma-based. Violet Scale entered, her movements careful compared to Siltharion's assured presence. She extended one talon toward Teddy's discarded toolkit. The psychic request came softly. "Show me the disrupted frequency patterns." Teddy flipped open a secondary display projecting the garbled sensor data. Violet Scale studied it with head tilted, not confusion, but the focused attention of a mathematician, examining an interesting proof gap. Without warning, she seized Teddy's wrist and pressed his bare palm against the ship's wall. Fractured impressions flooded his nervous system. Not pain exactly, but the overwhelming sensory overload of incompatible systems trying to communicate. The ship recognized him now not as foreign object, but as damaged component. Repair instincts triggered. Bioluminescent filaments emerged from the walls, seeking his skin. Siltharion moved to intervene, then stopped. Teddy wasn't screaming. His breathing had synchronized with the ship's rhythms, sweat beading on his forehead as neuronal pathways adapted in real time. The diagnostic scanner's display stabilized suddenly, showing clean readings for the first time. Teddy exhaled sharply as understanding dawned. Dragantech didn't interface, it assimilated. Standard tools failed because they treated these systems as machines to be probed externally. Human hands could bridge the gap precisely because they were imperfect, adaptable biological instruments. Themselves, Violet Scale watched with something like satisfaction as Teddy eschewed his scanner entirely now. He let fingertips hover millimeters from pulsing conduits, feeling the energy fluctuations through changes in air pressure and static charge. The ship responded to these subtle cues, adjusting flows with none of its earlier distress. Siltharian's telepathic voice carried new respect. You perceive the patterns where others see only chaos. Teddy flexed his tingling fingers. The realization settled deeper. This symbiosis underpinned everything about the hybridization project. If he could instinctively understand living ships, perhaps their paradoxical genetics weren't so insurmountable after all. The birthing cavern's bioluminescent growths dimmed as the assembled dragons took positions around the central dais. Teddy stood barefoot on the smooth organic platform, his worn coveralls stark against the pulsating purple membrane beneath him. Siltharian's tail coiled around the dais's edge in a protective arc, her scales reflecting the low light and shifting patterns. Across the chamber, Obsidian's faction clustered together, their dark forms resembling jagged obsidian formations. Neural tendrils rose from the dais like living ivy, seeking Teddy's bare skin. The first contact burned, not with heat, but with the sharp immediacy of synaptic connections forcibly aligning. His bones ached as the transformation sequence initiated, human marrow flooding with dragon-specific proteins. The chamber's air thickened with pheromonal markers as bioscanners tracked every molecular change. Teddy's spine arched violently. Vertebrae extended in rapid pulses, each expansion accompanied by wet, cracking sounds. Violet Scale leaned forward, her nostrils flaring to sample airborne genetic data. Where other dragons recoiled at the chaotic transformation, she cataloged each adaptation with visible fascination. Siltharian's psychic voice cut through the growing tension. Observe the neural retention patterns. Her command directed attention to Teddy's vitals display. Despite his screaming muscles and distending ribcage, his brainwave patterns held steady, human consciousness remaining sharply intact even as his body quadrupled in mass. Obsidian's tail lashed unexpectedly. Abomination. The psychic blast hit Teddy mid-transformation like a physical blow. His emerging wing membrane spasmed, still wet and half-formed. Siltharian interposed herself, answering with a counterpulse that made the cavern walls vibrate. Teddy's left hand convulsed into an enormous claw before their eyes. The transformation wasn't symmetrical. His right arm lagged several seconds behind, human fingers stubbornly retaining their shape before the keratin sheaths finally erupted. This wasn't the flawless metamorphosis dragons expected. It was messy. Adaptive alarms blared across 3 different bioscan stations simultaneously. The hybrid form, now towering over even the largest purebloods, showed energy signatures that shouldn't exist. Biological superconductivity, where dragon cells interfaced. With Teddy's augmented nerves, his massive chest heaved, drawing first breath through newly formed lung sacs capable of processing both oxygen and vacuum. A rasping chuckle echoed through the chamber. Vermilion, the oldest living geneticist, extended a trembling claw toward the readings. Fascinating. Her telepathic voice carried none of Obsidian's disgust, only hungry curiosity. She tapped a display showing Teddy's integrated systems, his mechanical knowledge somehow surviving translation into draconic biology, evident in how his neural clusters self-organized along efficient circuitry-like pathways. Teddy's human voice emerged distorted but recognizable from the hybrid muzzle. Secondary systems check. The words vibrated at frequencies that made nearby crystals hum. His gargantuan wings unfolded experimentally, membranes still glistening with nutrient fluids. The movement generated unexpected vortex patterns in the cavern's thick air. Aerodynamics no pureblood could achieve. Historical archives projected beside the dais flashed crimson warnings. No successful hybridization in recorded history. No previous subject maintaining vocal speech post-transformation. Dragon science considered these outcomes biologically impossible, their rigid genetic coding incapable of such flexibility. Teddy's tail, thick as an ancient tree trunk, swung gently as he tested balance. The motion destroyed a scanning array, sending technicians scrambling. Obsidian's faction hissed in unison, their scales flushing darker with disapproval. Only Violet's scale noticed what others missed. The tail's impact zone showed perfect proportional force distribution, leaving structural supports intact, not loss of control. Precision testing. Siltharian's claws clicked against the dais. Demonstrate the plasma breath. The command hung expectantly in the psychic space between them. Vermilion activated containment fields while Obsidian's group retreated behind reinforced membranes. Teddy's hybrid form shuddered. Internal systems flared across scanners as he accessed fire glands no human should possess. The resulting exhale wasn't pure plasma, but something new. A spiraling helix of superheated matter woven through with electromagnetic tendrils. It struck the test barrier and immediately adapted, changing frequencies to bypass containment protocols. Safety systems overloaded spectacularly. Vermilion's aged wings spread in the first full display of excitement any present had ever witnessed from her. The energy readings matched nothing in pure-blood capabilities. Teddy's human-originated neural plasticity had altered fundamental biological processes, creating hybridized functions. The implications frightened traditionalists and excited reformers in equal measure. The night before the scheduled hybridization attempt, the birthing chamber thrummed with tension as Teddy lay prone on the organic platform. Tendrils of dragon, biotech slithered across his bare torso, their needle-like tips seeking entry points. Siltharian mirrored his posture a meter away, her massive form constrained by neural dampeners to prevent instinctive resistance. Between them, Vermilion's team monitored thousands of biological readouts. Oxygen saturation in Teddy's hybridizing cells, primal memory access patterns in Siltharian's psyche. The first synchronization pulse hit like a sledgehammer to the sternum. Teddy's scream came out silent. His vocal cords had already begun molecular restructuring. His left hand elongated grotesquely, fingers fusing into something between talon and tool. Across the platform, Siltharian's scales rippled with involuntary, chromatic distress signals. 3 advisors immediately rushed to terminate the procedure. Violet's scale blocked their path, scanners flaring. Teddy's neural implants fired emergency protocols. His bones cracked like overloaded support beams, rearranging into configurations the diagnostic AIs couldn't parse. The chamber's walls pulsed with stress patterns, absorbing his suffering as biochemical data. Vermilion barked orders to her assistants. The 4th failure was imminent. Then something shifted. Teddy's convulsions synchronized precisely with Siltharian's pheromonal releases. His biology found a grotesque rhythm, human cells adapting instead of resisting. The override implant in his cerebellum should have neutralized the transformation signals. Instead, it began translating them. Dragon scientists clustered around a single display showing Teddy's synaptic activity, where purebloods maintained 4 primary neural frequencies during transformation. His brain cycled through 12 distinct patterns, human cognitive flexibility superimposed on draconic metamorphosis protocols. Siltharian's psychic signature entangled with his, creating a composite consciousness neither wholly dragon nor human. The chamber's bioluminescence intensified as their cellular structures achieved temporary harmony. Teddy's remaining human features smoothed into hybrid forms without further trauma. Siltharian's wing membranes developed unexpected vascular branching, human-like capillary networks enhancing oxygenation. Vermilion's instruments registered the critical threshold passing at 1743 Standard Time. Molecular binding successful. Structural integration holding. The readouts scrolled too fast for unaided comprehension. Mitochondrial fusion. Neural pathway handshakes. Epigenetic reprogramming. Teddy's mechanical augmentations should have been ejected as foreign objects. Instead, they'd incorporated into the transformation matrix, becoming seamless biological components. Violet's scale isolated the breakthrough variable to music, specifically, the Beethoven recordings Teddy had shared with Siltharian during their courtship. Their synchronized brainwaves now pulsed with rhythmic patterns mirroring symphonic structures. Where previous attempts had forced genetic merger, this union danced, Siltharian's midsection contracted violently. Emergency sensors flared as her reproductive system initiated egg production 6 standard months ahead of schedule. The shock nearly destabilized the transformation until Teddy, somehow still conscious, reached out with his half-formed wing. His talon made contact, channeling the electrical storm of his human nervous system into stabilizing frequencies. 3 eggs took shape in record time, their flexible membranes already showing hybrid characteristics. The smallest absorbed unusual amounts of calcium from the host chamber, developing a denser skeletal foundation. The largest pulsed with erratic bioluminescence, random patterns interspersed with flashes resembling human neural discharges. Obsidian's contingent stormed out when the viability projections hit 89%. Their departure barely registered against the greater wonder. Living hybrids were no longer theory. The twins developing inside Siltharian represented something unprecedented. The first draconic beings in 12 millennia, whose genetics included controlled chaos. Vermilion's aged claws trembled as she reviewed the final metrics. Teddy's human immune markers persisted in the egg's nutrient medium, actively rewriting previously rigid developmental sequences. More remarkably, Siltharian's biology retained these modifications post-separation. The chamber's cleanup drones hesitated near the platform. Where typical post-birth residue involved shedding unviable tissue, here they found only productive symbiosis. Teddy's discarded human cells repurposed into structural reinforcement for the chamber walls. His mechanical augmentations had dissolved entirely, their functions distributed throughout his new hybrid physiology. Violet Scale quietly collected samples of the air itself. The pheromonal mix showed cross-species bonding markers at concentrations never documented outside mated pairs. The implications stretched beyond genetics into uncharted social dimensions. By morning, the eggs had already doubled in mass. Their shells thickened with alternating layers of keratin and stainless steel-like alloy, structures no pure-blood egg had ever produced. The monitoring AIs struggled to categorize their metabolic rates, which fluctuated between draconic and human developmental benchmarks. Siltharian rested one talon on Teddy's shoulder as they observed the incubation chamber. Her usual psychic presence felt different, infused with human-style subjective nuance. When she spoke aloud, the words emerged accented but clear. "They'll need names." Teddy's answering grin showed slightly too many teeth, his facial muscles still adapting. His hand, now more claw than fingers, hovered over the observation pane. The eggs pulsed in sync with his heartbeat. In the control room, Vermilion cross-referenced the twins' projected maturation timeline against historical records. Her screen flashed red warnings. At current rates, they'd achieve full cognitive and physical development within 8 standard weeks. No dragon in recorded history had grown that fast. Violet Scale adjusted the nutrient mix again as another growth spurt rippled through the smallest egg's membrane. The makeshift nurseries, walls hummed with an unfamiliar energy signature, part plasma, part electricity, wholly unique. Somewhere beneath the sound, if one listened carefully, there came the faintest echo of violin music. The incubation chamber's nutrient mist cleared in uneven swirls as Astrid's eggs split along fractal seams. Unlike traditional draconic hatchlings, who emerged weak and blind, she crawled forth fully coordinated, her eyes already tracking the blinking diagnostic panels overhead. Jasper followed moments later, his egg fragments fusing back together the instant he cleared them, a self-repair function no pureblood ever displayed. Teddy's hybrid form barely had time to react before Astrid levitated. Not flight, actual anti-gravitic lift independent of wing mechanics. Her tiny claws left scorch patterns on the observation glass where she gripped it, the marks resolving into perfect electrical schematics. Jasper demonstrated stranger talents, repairing a failing life support module by exhaling over its fractured housing. The frost spreading from his breath carried nanoscale filaments that rewrote the machinery at a molecular level. Vermilion's senescent-scarred talons trembled as she reviewed the genetic readouts. The twins weren't simply hybrids. They represented an entirely new classification of being. Jasper's bone density fluctuated between human norm and draconic extremes based on gravitational needs. Astrid's brainwaves showed simultaneous operation across 7 distinct frequency bands. When they vocalized, the sound shredded conventional recording equipment. Siltharion observed with quiet intensity as her offspring investigated their environment. Astrid dismantled a scanning drone using only psionics, then reassembled it superior to its original configuration. Jasper phased his forelimb through solid matter to retrieve a fallen nutrient canister. These weren't random mutations. They were logical evolutions addressing known species limitations. The council chamber erupted hours later when Vermilion presented her findings. Obsidian's faction cited historical texts detailing ancient horrors birthed from genetic meddling. Violet's scale countered with efficiency calculations. Astrid's technology interface speed exceeded even augmented human capabilities, while Jasper's matter phasing solved 9 long-standing engineering constraints. 3 pureblood hatchlings visiting the nursery with their sire provided the most damning evidence. When Astrid playfully touched a defective translator implant in one visitor's ear, the device not only repaired itself, but expanded the young dragon's vocabulary by 40%. Jasper's accidental sneeze inadvertently enhanced another's fire gland efficiency beyond elite warrior standards. The implications terrified traditionalists. These hybrids didn't just thrive, they elevated others through proximity. Weekly physicals revealed accelerated epigenetic triggering. Astrid's neural plasmoids doubled in complexity every 72 hours. Jasper absorbed metalloid compounds through his membranes, incorporating them into his skeletal structure as needed. Their most startling development emerged during a routine psychological assessment. The twins manifested an instinctive telepathic link with each other, communicating complex 3-dimensional concepts no 6-week-olds should comprehend. Medical staff discovered Astrid's blood contained symbiotic nanites of unknown origin. Obsidian struck the floor with enough force to fracture stone. This proves nothing. His psychic blast targeted Teddy directly this time. The hybrid faux obsidian's wings eclipsed the council chamber's bioluminescent fungi as he landed on the central dais. The black dragon's scales absorbed light instead of reflecting it, giving his form an unsettling absence of detail, like a hole cut into reality. When he spoke, the psychic projection carried centuries of finality. This experiment betrays our foundational laws. The ancient high draconic phrasing resonated through every dragon present, triggering instinctive postures of respect or resistance. Siltharion remained motionless, but Teddy's neural monitor showed her pulse patterns. Accelerating, this wasn't standard debate. Obsidian had invoked the genetic charters, a doctrinal framework older than human civilization. Behind him, 17 elders formed a wedge formation, their wing joints locked in formal challenge posture. Enough to force a verdict even over the Queen's objection. Vermilion limped forward, her age-whitened scales rustling. The data shows viability. She projected Teddy's transformation metrics onto the chamber floor, the numbers pulsing in defiant green. Obsidian's tail crushed the projection mid-sentence, scattering light fragments. Data cannot measure heritage. His rebuttal carried echoes of lost hatchlings, personal losses. Teddy's monitors translated from pheromonal traces. 3 failed. Clutches, each genetically pristine, each stillborn. Obsidian's mate had chosen the long sleep rather than face another cycle. The chamber's air thickened with conflicting pheromones. Violet's scale bristled near Teddy, her frustration manifesting in ultraviolet ripples across her hide. "We've preserved purity unto extinction," she pulsed. The youthful heresy made several elders flare their toxin glands. Teddy's implants recorded the social dynamics in real time. Obsidian's faction held 9 of 23 voting seats, not enough to ban the project outright, but sufficient to stall it indefinitely with procedural challenges. Every argument followed the same circular logic. Hybridization was abomination because their laws declared it so, and their laws were sacred because they prevented abominations. Human history echoed through the debate. Eugenics movements, caste systems, all the ways civilizations weaponize biology. Siltharion finally unfurled her wings, the biomechanical sound cutting through debate. "We will convene the Grand Conclave," at next equinox. Standard procedure would demand 3 years preparation, a transparent stall tactic. Then she did something unprecedented. Her claws scraped the stone, etching new sigils beside the ancient ones. But our guest's access continues uninterrupted. The symbols burned electric blue, a queen's personal decree overriding standard protocol. Obsidian's answering roar shattered crystalline growths along the ceiling. You violate continuity. His psychic blast targeted Teddy directly, carrying centuries of perfected draconic argumentation, equation-like proofs of why human DNA could never integrate without degrading their essence. Teddy's implants automatically dampened the psychic load, revealing something fascinating. The arguments weren't biological but aesthetic. Obsidian feared dilution of draconic beauty, the blurring of lineage markers, the loss of what made a dragon visually, undeniably dragon. Teddy's successful transformation didn't refute this. It exacerbated the terror. Violet scale intercepted. The next psychic assault, her own neural patterns forming a firewall. We've seen his stability. Let the hatchlings decide. The bold suggestion hung in the air. Dragon Young hadn't participated in council matters since the first reckoning. Teddy activated his wrist display. Numbers scrolled, not transformation. Metrics but energy readings from Siltharian's ship after his hybrid form interfaced with its systems. Efficiency gains, 19% propulsion improvement, 32% neural bandwidth expansion. He said nothing. The data pulsed rhythmically, syncing with the chamber's natural vibrations. Obsidian's third in command, a scarred veteran of the Delta Wolverine Wars, unexpectedly broke formation. His nostrils flared as he analyzed the readouts. These are wartime advantages. The quiet statement carried weight. This dragon had sacrificed much for survival already. Siltharian seized the opening. No votes today, no edicts. Her tail tapped the dais, releasing a pheromonal cocktail that eased tensions. Only observation. We let the next hybridization attempt proceed unhindered. Then we judge. The compromise shouldn't have worked. Yet, Teddy's biometric scanner showed opposition neural activity wavering. Obsidian recognized strategic defeat. Forcing a delay was possible, but outright blocking the project now would fracture the council. As the assembly dispersed, Violet Scale brushed against Teddy's arm, her scales transmitting a private pulse. Finish the demonstration before equinox. The unspoken implication hung between them. Once living hybrids existed, abstract arguments would pale beside their undeniable reality. Teddy studied Obsidian's retreating form. The old dragon moved stiffly, his injuries flaring. Not just physical ones. Every step carried the weight of convictions about to collide with necessity. The chamber's acoustics magnified the sound of his claws scraping stone, like a blade being drawn slowly from its sheath. Vermilion remained behind, her aged eyes tracking Teddy with unsettling focus. You carry death in your genes, human. The words should have been an accusation. Instead, they sounded like gratitude. Teddy held the antique headphones toward Siltharian's auditory receptors, the frayed wires barely contained by duct tape. The Dragon Queen tilted her massive head, unimpressed by the fragile human technology until the first violin notes of Beethoven's Fifth spilled through the earpieces. Her wing joints stiffened, not in alarm, but attention. The music affected dragons differently than humans. Teddy's biometric scanners showed her neural activity synchronizing with the tempo, then fracturing as the melody introduced discordant elements she couldn't reconcile with draconic harmonic theory. Later, Siltharian reciprocated by guiding Teddy through the cathedral of echoing scales. The structure wasn't built. It had been grown from genetically altered coral that responded to psychic imprinting. Teddy trailed fingers along walls that pulsed faintly at his touch, the architecture subtly reshaping itself to his presence. Where human buildings stood rigid against time, these organic spires cycled through generations of purposeful decay and rebirth, a living archive that made Teddy's mechanical metaphors feel clumsy by comparison. Their first major clash came during a simple genetics briefing. Siltharian presented dragon conception as a collective psychic endeavor, an entire lineage channeling memories into the unborn. Teddy immediately demanded individual consent protocols. The resulting argument left 3 translator modules melted and 2 priceless data crystals shattered. Only when Teddy likened the process to calibrating sensitive reactor feeds did Siltharian start grasping human concerns about autonomy. Late nights found them in the observation blister, Teddy explaining human jazz improvisation, while Siltharian demonstrated how ancestral memories influenced draconic creativity. Their debates often circled the same core disconnect. She saw individualism as tragic isolation. He viewed collective consciousness as stifling conformity. Yet through weary hours of circuitous discussion, something unexpected emerged. Without the hybridization project's pressure, their interactions might have remained transactional. Instead, they developed a rhythm. Vermilion began leaving discrete scanners near their meeting spaces. The data revealed an anomaly. When Teddy and Siltharian conversed beyond a certain duration, their brainwaves synchronized at frequencies unseen in either species' records. Not telepathy exactly, but something closer to resonance. This explained why their most frustrating philosophical debates often yielded sudden scientific breakthroughs. Their disagreements forced neural adaptations. One evening, Siltharian repeated a human phrase Teddy had used weeks prior: jury-rigged solution. The approximation in draconic vocalization sounded grotesque, but the accurate usage startled him more. She'd been studying human idioms in secret, translating their mechanical metaphors into concepts her kind could grasp. That same night, Teddy dreamt in dragon-infused symbols for the first time, his subconscious borrowing from her psychic vocabulary. The observation logs would later prove crucial when negotiations stalled with Obsidian's faction. Physical proximity between human and dragon enhanced cognitive flexibility in both species. Hybridization wasn't merely biological. It required this mutual cultural permeability. What began as scientific necessity slowly transformed through shared music, architecture, and terrible attempts at each other's humor. Their private moments revealed unexpected parallels. Siltharian collected human tools with the reverence of an archivist preserving artifacts. Teddy grew fascinated by how dragon young learned through tactile implantation of ancestral memories. When they weren't arguing ethics, they traded creation, myths, human stories of fashioned clay against dragon recollections of celestial birthing songs. Vermilion's confidential report to the Elder Council contained troubling findings. The bonding phenomenon wasn't limited to cognition. Pheromonal analysis showed cross-species attachment markers typically seen in dragon pair bonds. No precedent existed for such interspecies entanglement. Their games leave transient. Teddy leans against the balcony rail, his hands still bearing faint calluses from decades of wrenchwork. Siltharian's wing drapes over his shoulders, its membrane thinner and more translucent now, genetic changes deliberately adopted rather than inherited. Below them, the city pulses with bioluminescent veins, its spires adjusting minutely to shifting winds. Astrid and Jasper arc through the twilight sky, their latest game weaving matter and energy into fleeting sculptures. The patterns unfold and dissolve like thoughts given form. Echoes of their laughter bounce off organic towers that remember being steel. The impossible has become ordinary, the ordinary, extraordinary. A single rule remains unchanged. Things break. They get fixed better. Her testimony before the Science Council stunned the skyline pulses with organic spires and crystalline towers, their contours shifting slightly with each breath of solar wind. Teddy watches from the hybrid gardens as children, some scaled, others smooth-skinned, most a blend of both, chase each other through airspace that once demanded wings. Their play requires no safety nets. The city itself cushions stumbles with spontaneous gravity adjustments. Siltharian's shadow falls across the walkway, her form slimmer now after 15 years of genetic democratization. No single aesthetic dominates the colony anymore. Dragon-sized arches coexist with human-proportioned plazas, all constructed from self-healing bioalloys that remember both blueprints. She presses one claw against a residential wall, feeling the structure's contentment thrumming through its living substrate. Traditionalist enclaves persist at the city's fringes. Pureblood holdouts still debate whether hybrid children constitute a separate species or evolution's next step. Their gatherings grow sparser each year, fewer hatchlings born to parents unwilling to embrace change. Those debates feel increasingly irrelevant when third-generation hybrids teleport between districts casually. The central marketplace epitomizes the synthesis. Stalls sell fruit grown from vines that adjust flavor profiles to match consumer DNA, alongside dragon spore pastries that teach ancestral skills through taste. Payment happens through symbiotic exchange. The system tracks contributions rather than currency. Merchant and customer leave equally nourished in body and knowledge. Historical archives project growth metrics onto public walls. The colony's expansion defies all pre-hybridization urban planning models. Structures don't just occupy space, they negotiate it. Two buildings requiring the same footprint will merge foundations spontaneously, creating shared vertical gardens. Human architects once obsessed over zoning laws now collaborate with dragon nurturers to guide rather than control the organic sprawl. Teddy's old plasma wrench hangs in the engineering museum, encased in transparent living resin. The display updates weekly with new layers of meaning, some days highlighting its mechanical ingenuity, others focusing on how this simple tool became a cultural bridge. School children debate whether Teddy himself qualifies more as engineer or revolutionary. The museum walls subtly adjust lighting based on their discussion's direction. Siltharian's favorite observation deck no longer overlooks separate dragon and human sectors. The vista now reveals seamless integration, transport veins pulsing. With hybrid energy, residences adapting their layouts daily to occupants' needs, public spaces that reconfigure for whatever gathering emerges. She traces the city's growth rings in a support column, feeling 15 years of history in its density variations. Their twins lead educational tours through the biocore, demonstrating how the city digests waste into construction material. Astrid phases her hand through a processing conduit to showcase the molecular breakdown. Jasper explains the neural networks governing distribution patterns. Their students include equal parts wide-eyed initiates and grizzled elders finally conceding. Curiosity outweighs tradition. At dawn, maintenance crews walk districts with palm sensors, not to repair but to listen. The city communicates needs through vibrational patterns human-dragon hybrids translate best. A flickering light might receive attention hours before failing completely. Leaking pipes seal themselves when maintenance approaches. The concept of broken has become fluid here. Siltharian finds Teddy studying schematics near the central spire. The plans show infrastructure even now adapting to accommodate newly discovered hybrid abilities. Their exchange requires few words, a touch, a glance, the faint psychic resonance still linking them after all these years. Their private joke surfaces again. Impossible love built this. The phrase had escaped containment long ago. It adorns children's textbooks now as the colony's unofficial credo. Artist hybrids render it in light sculptures that change interpretation based on viewer biology. Displays cycle through hundreds of languages, living and dead, ensuring no one forgets origins matter less than destinations. Dusk settles over plazas where elders from both species share memory song beneath bioluminescent trees. The melodies weave human folk tunes with draconic harmonic structures, creating harmonies possible only through hybrid hearing ranges. Passers-by absorb the vibrations through their feet, adding subtle personal variations as the city itself records each new iteration. Deep in the infrastructure, maintenance logs note a curious pattern. Areas with the oldest traditionalist residents report higher self-repair rates than other sectors. The city seems determined to care for even its most reluctant citizens. Some interpret this as forgiveness, others see evolutionary pragmatism. Every perspective strengthens the whole. Teddy walks home through streets that remember his gait. The lighting adjusts not just for visibility, but to complement his circadian rhythms. Siltharian flies lazy, circles overhead, her flight path syncing with his steps through some unspoken understanding. Between them stretches the impossible city, not flawless but perfectly attuned to its inhabitants' beautiful complexities. Dawn will find hybrid children playing new games in the aerial gardens. Some will phase through matter just for the thrill of it. Others will coax dormant structures into unexpected bloom. The city watches, learns, adapts. Overhead, stars once unreachable gleam with the lights of sister colonies, each founded on the same improbable principle, each thriving in its own singular way. The plasma wrench rests inside a transparent column of biogel, its once greasy surface restored but not polished. Museum lights catch the weld marks along its handle, each scorch and dent corresponding to Meridian Station's early crisis logs. Visitors from 30 systems pause here, though few under 40 recognize the tool's original purpose. Next to it displays a dragon scale of comparable historical significance. The pairing wasn't controversial until purists noticed which artifact got primary placement. A group of young hybrids clusters around the exhibit, their scaled fingers leaving smudges on the info pane. Their teacher explains how this simple metal rod once anchored an entire civilization's technology. One pupil tilts her head, struggling to reconcile the primitive tool with the living city outside where buildings self-repair. Her frills flare ultraviolet as she accesses supplementary neural files. The wrench's schematics overlay her vision alongside Teddy's early repair logs. Purist scholars protest weekly about the exhibit's symbolism. Their essays circulate through academic networks, arguments that glorifying human tools diminishes draconic biological achievements. The debate peaked when a traditionalist historian demanded equal prominence for Siltharian's first molted scale. The museum compromised by threading that scale into the biogel itself, so it floats beside the wrench in eternal orbit. Astrid arrives unannounced, her latest crop of engineering students in tow. She doesn't lecture. Instead, she taps the display's interaction zone. The wrench's stress patterns illuminate, every microfracture from 15 years of service glowing like constellations. The students gasp as the patterns resolve into Meridian's old sector map. Each repair corresponds with a critical junction in the station's early survival. Modern maintenance requires no physical tools. Hybrid technicians interface directly with systems through thought and gesture. What was once called engineering now blends telepathy with quantum manipulation. Yet Teddy's approach remains foundational. Diagnose underlying causes rather than symptoms. Respect a system's original design intent, and above all else, listen to the machinery. Jasper catches Siltharian observing the display from the museum's upper gallery. Her posture gives nothing away, but the slight tightening of her wing membranes betrays amusement. He knows what she's remembering, Teddy's stubborn insistence during their first negotiation that tools mattered less than their wielder's philosophy. The memory carries warmth, though neither mentions it aloud. Historical archivists note something peculiar about the wrench's preservation. While most relics receive protective coatings, Teddy's tool remains functionally intact beneath its display gel. Its power cell could still activate with minimal charging. The museum directors quietly acknowledge this in their logs. The exhibit doubles as emergency backup should hybrid systems ever require primitive fallbacks. Debates about the wrench's significance miss its greater lesson. Teddy never stopped using it even as hybrid technology advanced. His final Meridian repair logs show the same tool calibrating quantum conduits and organic neural networks. The adjustments grew more precise, yes, but the philosophy never changed. Identify what's broken and fix it with whatever works. Siltharian's private logs, released posthumously, revealed her private nickname for Teddy, the Adapter. She considered this highest praise in dragon culture, where flexibility had once been seen as weakness. His wrench became symbolic, not through its mechanics, but through its owner's refusal to discard proven methods amidst advancing technology. The twins incorporate this lesson into their teaching. Jasper demonstrates dimensional phasing using the same diagnostic procedures Teddy applied to hyperdrive couplings. Astrid teaches neural interface protocols structured like old maintenance checklists. Their students initially resist these antiquated approaches, until realizing how reliably they surface overlooked variables. The station's original layout became unrecognizable within months. Central corridors widened into communal atriums where humans and dragons mingled comfortably. Residential districts Dev, the council chamber's crystalline walls pulsed amber as the first human representative took his seat beside dragon elders. Traditional roosting perches had been replaced by hybrid benches, part stone, part grav-assisted support. Obsidian's remaining loyalists clustered near the exits, their scales flushed darker with every procedural change. Siltharion watched from the reformed speaker's dais as Astrid demonstrated the new voting interface. The system required telepathic and manual input simultaneously, a design Teddy insisted would prevent either species from dominating. When the twins activated it, walls lit with real-time translation glyphs mirroring spoken debate, an innovation, exemplifying what pureblood governance had lacked, checks against unilateral power. Records showed dragons hadn't voluntarily revised their hierarchy since the first hatchery accords. Yet here they were, adapting parliamentary procedures from mammalian political systems. Committee leadership rotated between species. Veto powers required cross-culture consensus. The concessions hurt traditionalists most where it mattered, their historical identity as sole arbiters of truth. The first crisis came during infrastructure budgeting. Human delegates demanded transparency in organic growth allocations, incomprehensible to dragons who'd always trusted intuitive resource distribution. Arguments lasted 3 cycles until Jasper interfaced directly with the chamber's biodata network. Projections materialized overhead, visual equations both peoples could parse. A temporary fix, but revolutionary in its implications. Younger dragons adjusted fastest. Violet Scale spearheaded the interspecies arbitration wing, her team comprising equal parts engineers and elder lore keepers. When disputes arose over Meridian's expanding residential districts, she pioneered solution nesting, human problem trees grafted onto draconic memory webs. The hybrid approach yielded compromises satisfying neither side completely, yet resolving tensions neither could alone. Obsidian's last stand occurred during citizenship debates. His faction insisted only purebloods could hold council seats until Astrid levitated a disabled hatchling to the central podium. The child's neural implants, human-designed, dragon-enhanced, allowed her to project thoughts directly into the voting registry. The demonstration shattered centuries of draconic personhood definitions in 7 silent minutes. Teddy's engineering principles shaped the procedural backbone. Redundant validation checks mirrored safety overrides on plasma conduits. Emergency protocols adapted from reactor containment procedures. Even the speaking rotation followed maintenance cycle logic, no voice dominating critical systems too long. The structures felt instinctively fair to technicians and lore masters alike. Human representatives struggled differently. Commander Hale froze during her first policy statement when the chamber walls pulsed in response to her emotional stress. Dragon delegates instantly adjusted discussion tones, a courtesy unnerving to those accustomed to adversarial politics. The learning curve proved steep for both species. Voting percentages told the real story. Early measures passed by narrow margins, often along species lines. By the 7th session, cross-cultural alliances formed naturally around issues rather than biology. The twins' schoolmates, first hybrid generation raised in the new system, began testifying during juvenile welfare debates. Their composite perspectives made obsolete old either-or frameworks. Medical oversight became the model for other sectors. Dragon healers and human surgeons co-chaired the Health Council, their merged guidelines incorporating ancestral memory diagnostics alongside evidence-based trials. When outbreaks occurred, response teams combined epidemiological models with communal psionic alerts. Mortality rates plummeted. The governance exchange flowed both ways. Stations near Dragon Space adopted modified versions of the hybrid system. Human colonies integrated organic infrastructure oversight roles inspired by draconic nurture protocols. Neither system transplanted perfectly, but the cross-pollination solved local crises in 17 sectors within 18 months. Final ratification of the permanent charter occurred without fanfare. Delegates were too busy implementing housing reforms to stage ceremonial signings. Siltharion found the document's living copy growing naturally within the central atrium's decision tree vine cluster. Its branches updated automatically as precedents accumulated, another Teddy-inspired adaptation. Only historians noted the quiet revolution. For millennia, draconic policy had fossilized inside ritualized protocols. Now council sessions buzzed with chaotic creativity. A human engineer's lateral solution to resource distribution sparked 3 ancestral memory revelations. A Elder's spontaneous epic poem clarified coalition logistics better than any flowchart. The first hybrid children reached voting age as the system stress-tested itself. Their ballots carried dual weighting, counted both as individual voices and genetic bridge metrics. None found this remarkable. They'd never known a world where governance didn't bend to accommodate diversity. Meridian's walls remembered, though. Their deepest growth rings retained echoes of Obsidian's final protest before his reluctant integration. The old warrior's admission, delivered during a nighttime vigil, still resonated in the chamber's resonant stones. Our strength wasn't in purity. It was in survival. By the next equinox, even that dissent had been absorbed, becoming simply another strand in the living constitution's ever-thickening weave. The beats between debate and decision grew shorter, the adaptations swifter. Governance had become what everything else was becoming, a process, not an edict. Maintenance drones polished the vacant speaker's dais each morning out of tradition. No one used it anymore. Leadership had distributed too thoroughly to require centralized platforms. Proposals emerged from collaborative nodes, refined through hybrid lenses before reaching ratification. Teddy's latest modifications allowed the twins to interface directly with historical archives during particularly complex deliberations. Their neural patterns traced connections no single species mind could perceive. The council chamber's ceiling now reflected these pathways, a living map of intersecting solutions glowing faintly in the dark, visible only when all delegates fell silent simultaneously. The observatory dome trembled as Astrid phased through its reinforced glass without breaking molecular cohesion. Outside, Jasper floated calmly in hard vacuum, his wing membranes shimmering with an auroral glow that defied known physics. Scientists scrambled to interpret sensor data. The twins weren't traversing space so much as temporarily redefining its local properties. Their first unauthorized interstellar excursion had lasted 14 minutes. They returned with samples from a protoplanetary disk 5 light-years away. Meridian's Security Council convened an emergency session. Footage showed Astrid repairing a critically injured engineer by exhaling over compound fractures, human bone reforming with dragon keratin reinforcements in seconds. Later that day, Jasper recalibrated the station's main reactor by plunging his claw into its containment field. These weren't incremental improvements. They violated fundamental assumptions about both species' limitations. Xenobiologists pored over the twins' latest scans. Their cellular structures now contained entirely new organelles, some mechanical, others biological, many defying classification. Standard genetic markers had disappeared, replaced by adaptive sequences that rewrote themselves in response to environmental stimuli. Medical databases returned error messages when queried for comparable cases. The research division's blackboard filled with equations describing Jasper's latest observed ability, phasic shifting. He'd casually walked through solid matter during a classroom demonstration, his body temporarily occupying overlapping dimensional states. Theoretical physicists collapsed 3 competing models trying to explain the mechanics. The twins themselves seemed unaware of doing anything remarkable. To them, these feats felt as natural as breathing. Communication breakthroughs followed. Astrid established instant contact with an exploration vessel at the galactic rim, her neural patterns somehow bypassing light speed limitations. Analyses showed her brainwaves briefly synchronizing with quantum foam structure. The transmission required no technology, just focused intention and a specific harmonic tone neither human vocal cords nor dragonfire glands should produce. Traditionalists saw nightmare scenarios unfolding. Security Chief O'Malley quietly authorized contingency plans for containing hybrid abilities. These documents gathered dust when Jasper spontaneously healed the chief's degenerative spinal condition during routine testing. The gesture carried no apparent motive beyond instinctive compassion. Deep archival research revealed how unprecedented these developments were. Dragon historians uncovered no legends of individuals exhibiting multi-domain mastery. Human records showed no parapsychological cases approaching this scope. The twins represented something entirely new: evolutionary synthesis creating capabilities neither parent species possessed separately. Obsidian's estranged sibling, Onyx, broke decades of silence to share forbidden lore about dimensional folding. Ancient dragons once theorized the possibility, but their genetic rigidity prevented practical manifestation. They patrolled her bloodstream, correcting cellular errors before they formed and adapting to threats no scanner. The air in the research dome smelled of charged ions and anticipation. Vermilion's team had run the final simulations 17 times, cross-checking against every known variable. When the lead geneticist lifted her claw from the terminal, the projection screen lit with a single glowing number: 93%. Complete silence followed. Even the ever-present hum of the environmental system seemed to pause. The statistic represented viability projections across 7 generations. Teddy's genetic material provided exactly what dragons had unknowingly lacked: controlled diversity. Where their engineered perfection had frozen evolutionary progress, human DNA's beautiful messiness restored adaptive potential. The models accounted for atmospheric changes, gravitational variances, even theoretical cosmic shifts. The margin of error clocked in at 0.7%. Obsidian's tail struck the floor hard enough to crack reinforced ceramic tiles. Numbers mean nothing. His psychic blast distorted the projection momentarily. Where are your calculations for lost traditions, forgotten histories? The elder's scales pulsed unevenly, betraying distress no telepathy could mask. 3 of his faction moved to flank him, but their earlier unity had visibly frayed. Meridian's human residents needed no convincing. Medical bay logs showed 147 voluntary compatibility screenings in the past week alone. Station engineers had already drafted modular expansions incorporating dragon-grown organic supports. The twins' unprecedented development made abstract statistics suddenly tangible. Every interaction with Astrid and Jasper demonstrated benefits too concrete to dismiss. Vermilion loaded archival records onto secondary displays. Dragon fertility rates had declined steadily for 12,000 years. Egg viability percentages once stood at 99.98%, an evolutionary dead end disguised as triumph. Comparative timelines showed their civilization's technological advances slowing to a crawl as genetic homogeneity took its toll. The data patterns overlapped disturbingly with Earth's Neolithic bottleneck events. Mid-Counselor Zelthar, previously a staunch traditionalist, stepped forward unexpectedly. His left wing bore faded scars from a childhood glandular malfunction that nearly cost him flight capability. The elder extended one claw toward Jasper, who instinctively mirrored the gesture. When their talons touched, Zelthar's chronic nerve pain visibly eased for the first time in decades. He said nothing. The demonstration needed no commentary. By nightfall, Meridian's western docking ring transformed into an impromptu hybridization clinic. Dragon medics worked alongside human physicians, adapting procedures in real time. First volunteer Lieutenant Chen's transformation took 19 painful minutes, far longer than Teddy's. But the resulting hybrid stabilized beautifully. Early scans showed her retaining human emotional cognition while gaining draconic memory access. She flexed new wing joints with something between terror and exhilaration, whispering, "I can feel the solar winds." Obsidian's retreating form cast long shadows down the access corridor. Only his closest supporters followed immediately. Others hesitated, torn between millennia of doctrine and the irrefutable results unfolding around them. Violet scaled discreetly, logged each moment of hesitation, potential future allies waiting for the right nudge. Station comms lit up with requests from other outposts. The tsunami of interest crashed through bureaucratic barriers before traditionalists could react. By morning, 7 neighboring colonies had drafted provisional hybridization accords. Dragon mothers who'd endured centuries of sterile clutches arrived without summons, their hope outpacing protocol. The twins seemed to intuit their role in the shifting tide. Astrid solved 3 critical engineering bottlenecks in as many hours, her solutions blending human ingenuity with draconic elegance. Jasper spontaneously developed a training protocol to ease new hybrids through their first transformations. Both actions appeared coincidental, yet perfectly timed to undermine remaining opposition. In the central agora, someone projected the number 93% across the dome's ceiling. It glowed day and night, becoming both rallying cry and beacon. Maintenance. Crews stopped painting over it after the 4th attempt. The station AI began incorporating the digits into routine displays, a subtle takeover even Siltharion hadn't anticipated. Structural modifications spread faster than official approvals could track. Human-designed corridors gained self-healing, dragon-grown membranes. Dragon nurseries incorporated human child development safeguards. The changes weren't compromises but improvements, each culture's strengths compensating for the other's blind spots. Obsidian's staunchest ally, matriarch Zexus, shocked everyone by submitting for genetic screening. Her public rationale cited duty to assess threats, but her private logs revealed deeper concerns. The twins had fixed her granddaughter's defective respiratory system with a touch. Some conversions required no argument, just undeniable results. Meridian's bulkhead seals hissed as atmospheric adjustments began. The station would never again be purely human or draconic. Hybridization extended beyond biology into infrastructure, governance, even art. A child's drawing of the 93% symbol appeared on the engineering deck, preserved under clear resin by unidentified crew. The station's outdated regulatory framework strained under the rapid evolution. Council protocols written in stone now confronted changes measured in hours rather than centuries. Siltharion watched from her observation perch as Teddy mediated between panicked bureaucrats and eager volunteers. His hands moved with the same precision she'd once seen him use on engine repairs, turning potential chaos into working systems. Somewhere in the residential sectors, Astrid and Jasper slept curled together, their bioluminescent patterns synchronizing in ways geneticists couldn't yet explain. Scanners showed their cellular structures exchanging information even in rest. The implications terrified and exhilarated researchers in equal measure. Dawn's light revealed the most telling change of all. The word Meridian now glowed above the main airlock in both standard and high draconic, their scripts intertwined, like the strands of a double helix. No committee had approved it. Someone simply made it so. The first living skyscraper grew 3 new elevator shafts overnight. Station Chief Ling watched through her office window as the structure reconfigured itself for morning traffic, organic pistons adjusting to accommodate heavier human usage on lower floors while draconic residents flowed through upper-level membrane portals. What began as Meridian's simple assimilation of dragon-grown materials had become something unexpected, structures that adapted like living things anticipating needs before occupants articulated them. Maintenance crews complained at first. Self-repairing wall panels made their jobs redundant until Jasper demonstrated how human technical knowledge could guide the organic systems. Now engineers coded problem-solving approaches into architecture like teaching memories to young dragons. Buildings developed hybrid personalities, some favoring strict efficiency, others whimsical flourishes no committee would approve. A transport hub grew extra seating each time crowds formed, learning crowd patterns better than any AI. Medical leaps followed. Dragon healers worked with human surgeons to develop symbiotic grafts, tissues fused with nanosutures that incorporated both species' cellular strengths. A construction worker's severed arm regrew in 17 days, the new limb stronger than its predecessor with keratin-reinforced bone structure. Doctors shook their heads at case files where hybrid patients out-healed projections by 40%. Resistance persisted in quiet corners. Older station residents eyed walls that breathed too obviously. Some humans couldn't adjust to transportation pods that arrived before being summoned, or doors that recognized intent rather than keycards. Security Chief O'Malley spent weeks arguing with a detention block that refused to imprison non-violent offenders, the cells softening inconveniently during confinement attempts. The twins moved through this evolving world with instinctive ease. Astrid's classroom absorbed her lessons, walls displaying complex schematics when she struggled with concepts. Jasper's favorite recreation corridor reconfigured daily to challenge his developing flight skills. Their presence catalyzed changes, corridors linking previously separate sectors, public spaces adjusting gravity to accommodate both walking and flight. Professor Alvarez's historical database showed the startling pace of adaptation. Previous attempts at organic architecture had plateaued within generations. What made Meridian different was the reciprocal integration, human analytical frameworks guiding Dragon Biotech's raw potential. A wastewater treatment plant became the breakthrough case study when it not only purified, but synthesized rare medicines from byproducts, a solution neither species could have conceived alone. Food production shifted dramatically. Aeroponics bays merged with dragon spore gardens, yielding crops that altered nutritional profiles based on consumer needs. Children's lunches contained mild immunoboosters during flu outbreaks. Cafeteria meals adapted subtly to correct individual vitamin deficiencies. Traditionalists grumbled about lack of choice until metrics showed health markers improving across all demographics. Teddy's augmented vision registered the jump signature, not a wormhole or conventional FTL, but space itself. The cavern pulsed with bioluminescent veins, their rhythmic flashes revealing egg sacs lining the walls like grotesque fruits. Each translucent membrane held a perfectly formed dragon fetus frozen mid-development. Teddy's boots sank into the spongy floor as Siltharion guided him deeper into the hatchery. Our genome achieved perfect stability 12 generations ago. The dragon's telepathic voice carried an unfamiliar edge, something between pride and bitter irony. She extended a claw, slicing open a mature egg sac with surgical precision. Clear fluid gushed out, carrying a fully developed hatchling that didn't stir. No mutations, no defects, only optimal replication. Teddy's neural scanner flickered as it attempted analysis. Every cell in the dead hatchling's body showed identical mitochondrial structures, no genetic drift, not even expected transcription errors. The readings violated basic biological principles, like finding an engine that never shed a single metal particle after centuries of use. Siltharion's wing membranes vibrated at ultrasonic frequencies, stirring the stagnant air. Embedded in the wall's fossilized egg clusters showed the same perfect preservation across geological strata. Teddy's geological scanner placed the oldest specimen at approximately 250,000 years, identical genome to the stillborn hatchling. Your tools cannot comprehend our biology. Siltharion's amusement carried psychic weight, pressing against Teddy's temples. She exhaled bioluminescent spores that settled on his forearm. The particles burrowed painlessly into his skin, forming temporary neural pathways. Suddenly he saw it. Their evolutionary tree pruned to a single unbranching line. Dragons didn't experience natural selection. They'd engineered themselves into genetic stasis millennia ago, eliminating randomness from reproduction. What began as triumph became trap. Their flawless DNA couldn't adapt when cosmic radiation patterns shifted outside predicted parameters. Teddy's medical scanners usually detected at least 40 minor mutations in any human tissue sample. Here, running the same analysis on Siltharion's shed scale produced absolute zero variance. Perfection had rendered them fragile. A pulsing membrane at the cavern's center caught his attention. This egg sac differed from the others, thicker, webbed with blackened veins. Siltharion's posture changed as they approached it, her wing joints stiffening. The last attempt. Inside floated twin fetuses, their development arrested at approximately 7 months. Teddy's scanner showed forced hybridization. Someone had spliced another species' DNA into these embryos. The foreign genetic material was breaking down in real time, cellular machinery rejecting it with violent precision. Siltharion's claws flexed involuntarily. 17 test subjects, 0 viable births. The failed hybrids represented centuries of desperation. Early attempts used carefully selected alien species, Later trials grew more reckless, even predatory life forms from radioactive hellscapes. Nothing took. Teddy wiped bioluminescent fluid from his scanner. The readings clarified why. Dragon cells didn't just reject foreign DNA, they annihilated it on molecular contact. Their perfect biological defenses had become a death sentence. Then his scanner pinged, an anomaly in his own readings compared against the dragon genome. Where Siltharian's cells showed mathematical symmetry, Teddy's displayed controlled chaos. His human DNA contained nested redundancy systems, fallback mechanisms, and millions of tiny transcription errors that somehow strengthened rather than weakened the whole. The realization clicked like a magnetic seal locking. They didn't need a mechanic. They needed a genetic pressure valve. Siltharian's massive head swiveled toward him, pupils contracting. You comprehend now. The telepathic voice carried something new, something no dragon had likely felt in millennia. Hope. Teddy studied the thousands of suspended eggs. Each represented a life that should have been. His fingers touched the latest containment sac, feeling the faint vibrations within. The twins still lived, barely. Their hybrid cells struggled against the dragon biology's perfection reflex. There might be a way. Teddy unclipped his neural scanner, modifying its output frequency to match Siltharian's brainwave patterns. But you won't like it. The cavern's bioluminescence intensified as dozens of adult dragons emerged from shadowed alcoves. Teddy's scanner showed their neural activity sinking, a council convening. Their centuries-long debate about purity versus survival was about to reach its verdict. Siltharian's tail coiled around the failed hybrid egg, her scales flushing darker. Show us. Teddy adjusted the scanner to project directly into their shared psychic space. His modified display showed human embryonic development. The beautiful, inefficient chaos of Teddy planted his boots on the spongy cavern floor, with the same stubborn stance he used when confronting malfunctioning reactors. The surrounding dragons shifted, their scales scraping against rock in a sound like grinding metal. His toolkit lay open between them, its magnetic clamps keeping tools from floating in the low gravity, a deliberate reminder that he operated by different rules here. First condition. He pointed to a hologram of Meridian Station still hovering above his wrist display. You stabilize the outpost and undo whatever psychic tampering you did to my crew. The dragon stirred at the word condition, their wing membranes flaring in discordant patterns. Teddy ignored them, adjusting the display to show real-time schematics of the damaged sectors. Full structural integrity. No lingering biological modifications to the humans. We do this clean. Siltharians. Tail tip twitched, the dragon equivalent of a raised eyebrow. Behind her, an elder with obsidian scales hissed something in their native tongue. The psychic translation leaked through anyway. Insolence. Teddy's neural monitors spiked as the elder pushed a wave of oppressive mental pressure at him. He gripped his plasma wrench tighter, letting its familiar weight ground him. Second term. He activated the wrench, its containment field humming at a frequency that made nearby dragon scales vibrate uncomfortably. Complete access to all your technology. No restricted areas, no blocked research topics. If I'm fixing your biology, I need to see how your machines work. The obsidian elder lunged forward, only to be blocked by Siltharian's wing. Her amusement vibrated through the psychic link, carrying an edge Teddy recognized. It was the same satisfaction engineers got when a prototype finally passed stress tests. You presume much, little mechanic. Teddy didn't blink. You're the ones who need a human's genetic chaos. This is the price. He dropped the third demand like a dead weight into still water. No forced hybridizations? Any dragon who wants to attempt this does it by choice, with full disclosure of risks. The cavern erupted in subsonic roars. Teddy's suit dampeners kicked in as pressure waves threatened to rupture his eardrums. Through watering eyes, he counted 7 distinct factions forming among the dragons. Some outraged, others curiously still. One younger dragon with violet scales actually crept closer, nostrils flaring as it analyzed Teddy's scent with clear fascination. Siltharian silenced the descent with a single pulse of psychic energy. The obsidian elder reared back as if struck. "You understand nothing of our ways," she projected, the words carving directly into Teddy's visual cortex as shimmering glyphs. "We are not equals negotiating trade." Teddy tapped his wrist display, pulling up the genetic scan from earlier. The chaotic helix of human DNA rotated beside the dragon's flawless strands. "You're right. I'm the one holding the solution you couldn't engineer in 1,000 years. He toggled the display to show Meridian again. "And these are my terms." The silence stretched. Bioluminescent fungi dimmed as if the cave itself held its breath. Finally, Siltharion extended one claw and traced a symbol into the cavern floor. The stone bubbled where she touched it, reforming into glowing sigils. "The station will be repaired within your lifespan's measurement of 3 days," she conceded. Teddy shook his head. 8 hours, before the next radiation storm hits Sector 9. A strange sound rattled through Siltharion's chest. Not a growl, but something dangerously close to laughter. Behind her, the obsidian elder's scales flattened in obvious disapproval. Violet Scale kept watching Teddy with unsettling intensity. "Done," Siltharion projected. The psychic word carried unexpected weight, more like a vow than simple agreement. Her great horned head tilted as the sigils on the floor brightened. "But know this, Theodore Griggs of Meridian Outpost. You bargain like a hatchling demanding sweets, yet propose terms worthy of our ancient courts." Teddy reset his plasma wrench's containment field, the motion calculatedly casual. "Just don't make me regret it." The violet dragon suddenly darted forward, pressing its snout against Teddy's tool belt before anyone could react. Its psychic voice was surprisingly soft for such a massive creature. "Show me your machines, human." The request lacked the imperious tone of its elders, pure curiosity without dominance. Across the cavern, Siltharion's eyes gleamed. Teddy realized suddenly why she'd conceded so readily. The younger generation was already adapting to his presence in ways the elders couldn't anticipate. His terms weren't limitations, they were cracks in a dam, and the pressure behind it had been building for millennia. At closing, Siltharion flexes her talons against the observation spire's railing. The keratin creaks, not from age, but from 15 years of gradual genetic democratization. Her scales no longer reflect light with their former aristocratic brilliance. This was the first concession, though she hadn't recognized it as such at the time. Dragon queens weren't meant to dull themselves. Below, a group of third-generation hybrids plays gravitational hopscotch across the central plaza. Their laughter carries upward on thermal currents. The smallest child misjudges a leap. Siltharion's wings tense instinctively, but the city's reactive safety systems cradle the young one before the stumble completes. No broken bones. No shame. Just readjusted trajectories. Dragon education once centered on unyielding strength. Hatchlings learned to mask pain before learning flight. Moral teachings emphasized dominance hierarchies as natural law. Siltharion's own coronation involved snapping the previous queen's weakest wing joint to prove superiority. None questioned these truths until a stubborn mechanic refused to bow. She remembers Teddy's first weeks in the hatchery. How his fragile body required environmental adjustments dragons considered shameful weaknesses, reduced gravity, filtered air, absurdly narrow temperature tolerances. Yet that same brittle form contained resilience no draconic warrior could match. He worked 18-hour cycles repairing systems until his human hands bled, then worked 4 more. The spire's living metal remembers her early frustrations. Siltharion's claw marks still mar certain sections where she raged against Teddy's illogical solutions. His habit of bypassing root causes to create functional workarounds offended millennia of draconic perfectionism. Yet those temporary fixes often outlasted traditional repairs. Historical archives confirm no dragon leader before her ever publicly reversed a decree. Siltharion checks the genetic timestamp on her forearm, 314 instances and counting. Each reversal strengthened the colony. The realization still unsettles her in quiet moments. Astrid's voice echoes through a nearby conduit. She's explaining dimensional mathematics to a mixed group of students. The lesson incorporates human algebra and draconic memory singing. Jasper interjects with tactile demonstrations. His claws phase through solid matter to illustrate theoretical concepts. Their teaching methods would have been banned as heresy during Siltharian's youth. A commotion draws her attention downward. Obsidian lands heavily in the plaza, his movements slowed by age but not frailty. The once fervent traditionalist allows a group of hybrid children to examine his scarred wings. One particularly bold youngster traces the old battle markings with curious fingers. Obsidian's spine remains rigid, but his tail curls protectively around the child's feet. The scene would have been unimaginable before the first eggs hatched. Siltharian's neural link pings with Teddy's location. He's in their private garden again, tinkering with some obsolete human gadget. She could join him easily. The spires. Transport nodes recognize her biometrics. Instead, she lingers, watching sunlight refract through the city's organic spires. Her forearm display replays an archival clip. Young Siltharian demanding Teddy's compliance, her wings spread to emphasize size advantage. The footage embarrasses her now. Dragon strength was never about physical dominance. True power revealed itself in adaptation. Teddy bending her worldview without ever raising his voice. Vermilion's final research scrolls across a subsidiary screen. The late scientist's last theory suggested hybrid abilities weren't random. Mutations but latent potentials unlocked through interspecies trust. Siltharian dismisses the notification. She requires no studies to verify what her life proves daily. The wind shifts, carrying scents from the human district bakeries. 15 years ago, the odors would have triggered her gag reflex. Now her digestive tract processes the complex proteins effortlessly. Another quiet evolution. Another surrendered battle. Jasper looks up from his lesson, sensing her gaze. His telepathic ping carries no words, just warm acknowledgement. Siltharian responds with the old family joke, visualizing Teddy's wrench. Jasper's answering laugh reverberates through her bones. Obsidian takes flight with surprising grace for his age. The children wave excitedly as he passes. Some mimic his technique with their own fledgling wings. Others simply float alongside him using their innate anti-gravity. The contrast would have sparked outrage decades prior. Now it's just another afternoon in the city's rhythm. Siltharian spreads her wings, feeling minute structural differences from years of genetic sharing. The changes cause no distress. They simply are. Teddy's waiting by the garden's central fountain when she arrives. His hands move with mechanic's precision even now, adjusting some tiny component. He looks up at her shadow and smiles, the same expression he wore when first defying a dragon queen. The city breathes around them. Somewhere below, the twins teach impossible skills to children who'll never doubt they're possible. On the coup, edge of the colony, an elderly traditionalist sneaks genetic modifications to ease arthritic joints. Siltharian settles beside her mate, wings draping comfortably over his shoulders. The posture would have shamed her ancestors. She finds she doesn't care. Two systems orbit each other here, not dominant and submissive but complementary, like oxygen and flame, like wrench and scale. The garden's sound system activates unprompted, playing that odd human symphony Teddy loves so much. Siltharian no longer winces at the discordant sections. She's learned to hear the beauty and resolution. Astrid phases through the outer observation dome without triggering the safety alarms. Her latest upgrade allows molecular disruption at variable densities. She can choose which layers of matter to interact with. Jasper watches from the city's main plaza, mirroring her movements precisely without leaving the ground. Their morning game defies 12 known physics principles. Teachers stopped keeping count after the twins began inventing new scientific categories. The education complex below them hums with debate. Xenogeneticists pore over data from the twins' latest abilities. When Astrid repaired a collapsed singularity generator yesterday, her cellular structure temporarily incorporated aspects of degenerate matter. Jasper's recent demonstration of parallel dimensional perception lasted 17 minutes. Long. Enough to sketch confirmed star systems from an adjacent reality. The reports circulate through academic networks, fueling both excitement and unease. Traditionalists cluster near the old Dragon Quarter, their scales flushed dark with concern. Elders whisper about gods and overreach. A fringe group petitions to restrict further hybridization research, their manifests filled with warnings about losing essential draconic nature. Their rallies dwindle each week as more youth join Astrid's open laboratories. City sensors track the twins' unique energy signatures as they move through daily routines. Their biometrics no longer align with standard hybrid baselines. Neurological scans show ghost impulses, activity in brain regions neither human nor dragon possess. The medical council debates whether to classify them as a new species classification or interpret their development as predictive of future hybrid evolution. Teddy observes from his workshop balcony. His fingers absently trace the outline of an obsolete wrench as he watches his children redesign municipal power grids through improvisational anti-gravity tapestries. Beside him, Siltharian's wing membranes vibrate at frequencies that once signaled imminent combat. Now they simply register complex maternal pride. Meridian's tourism logs tell their own story. Last quarter saw 14,000 visitors requesting transformation consultations. The medical annex expanded to accommodate pilgrims seeking even partial hybridization. Waiting lists stretch 18 months long. A thriving gray market sells gene therapy kits of dubious safety. Desperate attempts to approximate what the twins embody naturally. Historical projections accelerate faster than archivists can update them. The original 93% viability model has been surpassed in 14 key metrics. Hybrid offspring conceived now demonstrate abilities appearing in Astrid and Jasper only during adolescence. Dragon historians uncover ancient texts describing similar evolutionary leaps during their species' earliest days, before genetic engineering locked them into rigid perfection. Security footage captures a telling moment near the central gardens. A fourth-generation hybrid toddler phases partially through a park bench, laughing as his playmate tries to grab him. The children's caretakers barely glance up from their conversation. In 10 years, such feats may become unremarkable as blinking. The twins themselves show little interest in their celebrity. Astrid spends evenings tutoring pureblood hatchlings in human-dragon fusion techniques. Jasper voluntarily submits to exhaustive medical scans, his cellular structure providing templates for safer transformations. Neither considers their abilities extraordinary, just logical extensions of their parentage. Deep space probes return, with fascinating data. Hybrid crews report experiencing strange sensory phenomena near cosmic voids, sensations Astrid describes with perfect clarity from light years away. Theoretical physicists refine entire models based on her casual remarks about gravitational tides in adjacent dimensions. Siltharian finds her offspring perched atop the central spire at dusk. Astrid manipulates light into complex holograms while Jasper transmutes atmospheric gases into temporary crystalline structures.